Great. Well, thank you for everyone for joining me today. For those of you who are in Colorado, we're in the middle of a blizzard, so I apologize if this recording cuts out on me. I wanted just to start a little bit about my background. My name is Jenny Germano. I'm the owner of ICS Consulting Service based out of Denver, Colorado. I am an ex-dispensary manager, and I was a dispensary manager for about 6 years in Denver, and then I started my consulting business, and so I've had my business ICS Consulting now for a total of 4 years, and so I have pretty much like a decade of experience in regulated cannabis operations in Colorado, and right now I just focus on creating I want to create compliance education for all the licensed facilities out there. And I also help people with compliance in their facility. And so I have a lot of different services. At the end of the presentation, I'll show my website and my email address, and you can reach out and contact me, and then check out my website to see what my services are. Oops, oh my goodness. Malfunction today. There we go. Need a light touch for that. Okay, so basically we're going to be talking about what are all the different things that you can work on while you're during the licensing and build out process. A lot of times the licensing and build out process can be very overwhelming depending on what state that you're in. But I do believe all these tips can be used in no matter what state that you're in. And this is for applying for your local or your city and your state license in your state to obtain either a medical facility license or a recreational license. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was now you've begun your license application process, what do you work on now? One of the things that I want people to think about is while you're in your licensing phase and your build out phase, you really should be thinking about compliance this whole entire time, and that it's just not something you think about 2 weeks or 3 weeks before you open your facility and then you're done and you think you're there. It's an ongoing commitment, and you should be working on it at all phases of your business, whether you're in the process of building out your facility or your opening day. And I always like to say that there's the day after your opening day. And then it takes a continuous engagement with compliance. The arrow key's not working today. Okay. So this is something I kind of coined not that long ago. As a dispensary manager, I realized that, we were no longer in the business of just cultivating and producing and selling cannabis anymore. And that we are more in the business of compliance, and that compliance has to be at the forefront. It has to be one of the #1 things on your list. I know a lot of people like to dump money and have, their $5 or, $2 to $3 million facilities and hire the dream team and have the top of the line products. But what about compliance? I find sometimes that people choose branding and marketing over compliance, and that they have no problem spending $100,000 to $50,000 a year on marketing and branding, and they won't even spend, the $5,000 or less to have someone come in, train their employees, and just do a yearly compliance audit. And to me, without compliance, if you're not in compliance, you're not going to be open. So you're risking all the money that you invested in your company, the millions of dollars, just because you don't want to be fully engaged in compliance. So one of the things I like to talk about is if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. And for some reason, this saying resonated with me, because you have to know where you're at in this business. You have to know where you're at in compliance in your facility. Let's just say you get your build out done and you're a couple weeks from opening your facility, whether it's a grow production facility or a dispensary. Something like a third party audit, or even yourself, you can go through and have a checklist and see where you're at in your facility. Um, because if you don't know where you're at, you really will end up somewhere else. You could have violations that pile on. I know people who got busted their opening weekend for a dispensary, and they got busted on a vertical ID because they didn't want to invest in the $1,200 for a age verification scanner for their adult use dispensary for 21 and up. And Denver police came in the weekend they opened, and an employee let the undercover cop into the restricted access area, which is basically on this where the bud counters are. And then once that police officer got up to go make the purchase, another person checked the ID. Luckily, they were trained to check the ID twice, and it got through the door. And then once they got to the counter, she checked the ID and asked the person to leave. But the problem was they let someone in under 21 into the restricted access area, which is 21 and up. So they actually they got like a $15,000 fine. And had they sold to that police officer, it could have been $20,000 to $50,000 fine. They had to go to court. That employee got fired. She lost her badge. So there are consequences to not following compliance, and there are also consequences to not spending the money, and not investing $1,200 in an ID scanner cost them $10,000. So I just, I do these videos because I really want people to think about, should I really be cutting corners? Should I be trying to be cheaper? Because cheaper is not always better. And I would say most dispensaries now that I go into in Denver, I would say 80% have the age verification scanners now. It really started to catch on with people that, oh, I don't want to get busted on a vertical ID. And for those of you who don't know, a vertical ID is someone who's under the age of 21. But what happens is they turn 21 and they still have their vertical ID, and they come into the stores because they haven't gotten their new ID yet. And so Denver police were pretty smart, and they were coming in with vertical IDs and catching people who didn't have the scanner and busting them for underage sales, just like they do at liquor stores. So I think stamina is something important to talk about, because as we all know in this industry, there might be some people on here who already work at a facility, but for those of you who know what it's like to go through the licensing process, it's probably longer than a woman, carrying a child for 9 months before she gives birth. It is, I think it's much like childbirth, because you can start your licensing process and it could take you a year and a half from the minute you applied for the application, start your build out, and then your opening day. And so I want to implore people to have stamina and to not wear yourself out and try not to get overwhelmed, because you are going to need all that energy for the long haul. Because if you think doing the application and the build out and all that was insane and crazy and intense, wait till you open. And then now as an owner, you're now operating your facility. I would say most owners work in their facility the first year, and they work 70 hours a week, and they don't hire employees right away because they're trying to make a profit so they can hire employees. And so you want to have the stamina to get you across the finish line. And then once you get across the finish line, you have a whole new journey that starts, and that's when your facility is opening and operating. So like I said, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. And I like to say, take things in small pieces. If you're overwhelmed with everything that you got going on, make a list. Make 5 lists. Maybe just do a list of 5 and break things down and just say, okay, I want to work on this task next, and write out your steps. That will help you not be overwhelmed. But when you don't have it put out in steps and all you're doing is stuck in your mind and thinking about it, that's kind of basically what creates overwhelm. So it's really important to get all your steps written down on task that you want to So as we know, man, working in the marijuana industry, there's so much unknown and uncertainty. And I think there can be a lot of fear around that. Even when I was a dispensary manager, before we were really regulated in Colorado, before the MED, the Marijuana Enforcement Division, was created in like 2011, I was working in dispensaries in early 2009, and I was going through raid preparation training. I had to know what to do if the feds came in and raided us, because there was so much uncertainty in those days. And so I believe that other states face this. Colorado, once we became uber regulated, the Marijuana Enforcement Division was created. Medical became a lot more stricter. You could no longer just walk into a dispensary and sell out of a duffel bag. I remember as a manager purchasing product right from the grower who grew at his house, or bought the edibles from the person who made their edibles in the commissary kitchen. I like where we're at today because, one, everything is trackable, traceable, and we know what's going in the product. We have really good labeling, and I'm not a big fan of the CR containers, because I believe it's up to the parents to lock up their alcohol and prescription drugs and cannabis products. However, because of the labeling now, we can read and see what's going on, and we have testing, and we know if that product has pesticides or any, really harmful things in it. So regulation has actually been really good for us. I'm not a big fan of being over-regulated, but I am a fan of regulation. So I just wanted to share, like, if you're in a state or you're coming up against some fear or uncertainty, that's absolutely normal. And that on some level, all owners or employees in this industry, even ancillary companies, face this. Just the fear of maybe having your bank account shut down. I know people have been through 13 bank accounts, whether they're hemp, cannabis, or ancillary. Even nonprofits, I've heard of having their accounts shut down. I've been pretty fortunate, knock on wood, I haven't had that issue yet. But it doesn't even matter if you don't touch the plant. Uh, there are people who might not work with you just because, even if you say that you design websites for cannabis companies, that could be a risk for your company, believe it or not. It's really wild. And so these are just things to think about. I like to try to normalize a lot of things that people go through. And I know fear and uncertainty is one of the things that people experience. And I believe having good structure in your business, no matter what you are, if you're licensed or ancillary, really good structure honestly really does help with uncertainty, because at least you have that foundation to lean into when uncertain things come up. Lawyers and CPAs, oh my. So this is so important. As you're in the process of applying for your license, you need to get with the right people that can help you. Some people will go and just use their regular lawyer, instead of a cannabis lawyer. I highly suggest getting a cannabis lawyer who has studied the laws and works in licensing, has a relationship with your state, marijuana licensing authority, like for example in Colorado, has a good relationship with the Marijuana Enforcement Division, or if you're in Michigan and it's Lara, or if you're in Maryland, it's the MMCC. So it's really important to have a lawyer that is familiar with that and has a roadmap. You can have other lawyers. I mean, obviously, you get a lawyer to help you with your business, get your business plan and your contracts all together. But most cannabis lawyers I know actually are able to do that as well. I had somebody who used their bankruptcy lawyer for their cannabis stuff, and the woman, she couldn't do the application, and just because they're a lawyer doesn't mean they're the right lawyer. So you want to make sure and vet your lawyers, get references from people, and see, have they worked with this lawyer? And obviously you got to work with a lawyer in your state, because their license in that state. So a CPA, so basically why a CPA is important, and not just any CPA, a CPA who understands 280E. And for those of you who don't understand what 280E, it's a tax code that came out, I think, in the 70s in the Nixon era, and it was basically created because just bad people like gangsters, mobsters, or drug dealers were taking advantage of the system, and they were basically writing off things like yachts and boats and houses that they were getting from illegal drugs. And so that's why when you look at 280E, that if it's federally illegal and if it's a Schedule 1, that you can't write off, all you can write off is cost of goods sold. That's it. I think dispensaries take the biggest hit because once you get into the grow, it's more of a warehouse environment or production. But the normal things that people write off in their business every day, you cannot write off in cannabis businesses. And this is for people who touch the plant. As an ancillary business, 280E does not affect me. So if you're ancillary, you don't have to worry about 280E. But if you're a plant touching business, you really do have to worry about 280E. And you want to find the best person possible to help you who really knows this tax code, because 280E, and I actually gave a speech on this in Boston in December about 280E, and they actually get hit at a tax rate of 70% or higher, and the corporate tax rate I think was like 22%, and so they get annihilated. And so people have this assumption, oh well, if you're in cannabis and you have a dispensary or grow, you must be a millionaire. You have tons of money, and I'm gonna take you for all your money. But what people don't realize, they actually don't have as much money as you think they do. Maybe the chains do, like the bigger places, but these mom and pop places who only have 1 or 2 stores, they're getting raked over the coals with taxes, and they're getting hit hard. So just because they own a facility in cannabis, there's no way they actually are millionaires. It's just a myth. And I know a lot of places that are struggling. They can't even afford to have someone come in and audit them or help them or train their employees, and they just run on the bare minimum in their facilities. So you just want to make sure you have somebody that understands the 280E tax code. So creating structure for every phase during your build out process is really important. You want to set compliance goals that are attainable for each phase. So I highly suggest once your draft rules are written, like right now, I was trying to look up the Missouri rules, but I couldn't get access to all the draft rules on the website. Like I couldn't click on the link, so I don't think they have everything released yet. This can be challenging, but you want to get your eyes and ears on everything you can possible in your state and read as much as you can. Like if you go to our Marijuana Enforcement Division, or short for MED, the website, there's tons of information on there. You could spend probably a couple weeks just reading through all the content on there. So whatever state you're in, you want to make sure you read all the rules and regulations and start creating structure, like checklists. To me, I believe regulations are structure. So the good news is it's already been done for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now you just have to read it and implement it. You want to do your homework and research. You want to make sure that you fully understand what you're getting yourself into, that you fully understand the license and what exactly that you're doing. I know people who have opened a dispensary and have no idea how to run it, how it operates, but they just want to have a dispensary, which is fine because you can be trainable, but you have to hire someone that can come in and help you and train you how to operate a dispensary. To me, that would be terrifying to open a dispensary without any knowledge. It would just be a little scary to hit that process. Another thing too is that when you create checklists, there's a couple things you want to look for. Is what about a point of sale system? Are you going to be on a state seed to sale tracking system like Metric? Is Metric coming to your state? How much information can you learn and get yourself prepared for Metric? Because once you open your facility and things really start getting booming, Metric is a full-time job for that employee in your facility. But also you want to start looking for a point of sale software. Even if you're at a grow, if you're going to do wholesale, you need some type of point of sale software. Sure, you can use QuickBooks, but want to find something that integrates with Metric. That's the thing. Does QuickBooks integrate with Metric? I don't think it does. So you need to look for a point of sale software out there that connect and can talk to Metric. I think that's also important. And there was one more thing. Oh, packaging. Start looking for packaging now. I had people who wanted to open and they were 2 weeks away from opening the production facility and they didn't even have their packaging nailed down. And because of that, it actually pushed them back almost 2 to 3 months. They didn't have their labeling figured out, they didn't have their packaging figured out, and they couldn't open within that 2-week period that they wanted to open. So this could have all been done during the build out and licensing phase. And you don't want to just wait to the last minute. Wow, sorry, I'm looking out my window and it is crazy blizzard like outside. Wowzers. Okay. So like I said earlier, regulation is structure. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already done for you. Sure, you can create some additional structure or operating procedures. But the good news is that the regulation's already been created for you by your city and state. So this is really important. The importance of trust and verify. This is so important, especially no matter what facility that you're in, you should be doing your own self-auditing. Every facility, whether you're a grow, you're a producer, making concentrates or edibles, or a dispensary, your manager or your compliance team or the owner, you should try to figure out what it means to audit your facility. It's great. You want outside eyes, but I mean, you shouldn't have a third-party auditor in your facility every month. That's just crazy. Unless you're brand new and you were doing it for 6 months and you were just trying to get through the process, I could see that happening. But technically, your manager should be doing it. As a dispensary manager, I always did a monthly audit. I audited my inventory. Actually, inventory was audited every day. Actually, in some facilities, I had to do it in the morning and at close. We always did inventory all the time. And that's another way you can audit yourself, along with doing a self-compliance audit and just seeing where you guys are at. So trusting and verifying is, for example, if I'm on an audit and I come in and I say, oh, can I see this specific SOP? Let's just say I'm in a grow and I'm like, hey, where's your SOP on how to harvest? How do you guys harvest your plants? And then that grower says, oh, it's on John's computer and John's not here today. We don't have it on site. I'm going to mark you for a violation because I couldn't physically see it with my eyes. So if you're a manager and owner and you're doing that self-audit, just because it's your facility, you don't give them the pass. You shouldn't give yourself a pass and say, oh, okay, well, it's not here, it's not on site, or I know we're working on it. You have to be careful when you're self-auditing. You really do have to be strict. You want to physically see it with your eyes. And did it come from a trusted resource? Now, obviously, if you're doing your own facility, of course, it's a trusted resource. But me as an outside auditor, I don't know if it's from a trusted resource. I need to determine that during the audit inspection. And so I need to physically see everything. I'm going to come in, I'm going to go through all your SOPs. I'm going to make sure you have a table of contents, everything like that. So for me, that's what trust and verify means when you're auditing. You just don't want to take someone's word. You have to see it with your own eyes for it to be true. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading my notes. So I know for most applications, you have to have a security plan. Some states, I think Michigan, they have like a staffing plan on their application. How are your employees going to be trained? What were your hiring processes? And so every state pretty much has a security plan. Who's the company you're going to use? They pretty much write the security plan that goes into the application. Um, but here's what happens. What people do is they spend the 5 or 10 grand to get someone to come in to write the application and get the security plan, and they might pick the security person to do their plan, and then once they get the license application, they don't even do anything they said they were going to do on the application. It's so crazy shocking. And then they go find someone cheaper because that security company bid them out at, we'll just say, $30,000 to come in and install the cameras, build the vaults, everything in the facility, and they found someone at a cheaper cost and they dumped the person that was on the application. This can be risky because I've seen people do it and it cost them in the end because they went with the cheaper person and that cheaper person cut corners and they didn't do as good of a job. And the integrity with that, you just told the state, I mean, to me, that's a lack of integrity. You just told the state you were going to go with this company, here is your plan, and then once you got what you wanted, which was the license, you ditched the plan. To me, that's not follow through, and that's lacking integrity. So, and also, just because once you get your build out and your security plan is done and now you're fully operational, you still need to stay engaged in your security process. You still should be as a dispensary manager, it was either myself or I'd make another person walk the perimeter of the facility. Because one point I was running a facility that had a grow and a store attached to it, and I wanted to see, was anyone trying to cut in to our fencing to get in at night? If we didn't have a security guard, so I wanted to always walk the perimeter and see if there was anything going on fishy with our fencing or our barbed wire, anything that maybe somebody cased our joint and they were going to come back in the middle of the night. And the reason I say this is because every facility in 6 years that I worked at went through a burglary. Not a robbery, but a burglary. And the grow that I'm talking about, that I was the manager of this facility, somebody drove a car through our fence and rammed our door and took down our door and got into our grow with their car. So this kind of stuff is normal. I mean, it literally happened at every single dispensary or facility that I worked at. And it wasn't a fluke. I think I just watched a video not that long ago. A brand new dispensary in Detroit opened. Somebody drove a Suburban, backed it up at 60 miles an hour, took out their wall, just rammed right through the dispensary, and 10 people run into the dispensary with trash bags and garbage cans and start stealing everything. Load up the Suburban and they get away before the cops get there. That's the problem. The alarm goes off in 60 seconds, but how fast do the police get there? And sometimes it's not fast at all, because all the burglaries I went through, you didn't see the cops for hours, and there would be a big hole in our building just sitting there where people could come in and steal whatever they wanted. So you want to make sure you have a good security system, because you want to make sure they call you right away when that happens. I've known people who got broken into and they never got called, and they had everything stolen. So you want to pick a good security company. This leads me to vetting vendors. It is so important to vet vendors because, like I said, you don't want to have what happened to that one facility where the security company didn't alert them when they got burglarized. And there was a big hole in the middle of the dispensary, and it just sat there all night, and you could watch the camera footage. People would walk by, but they were too scared to go in. They knew it was a dispensary. And it took, I think it took Colorado Springs police 3 hours before they showed up, while there's a big hole in the middle of this dispensary. So you also have to remember that in your state, that some cities or towns, the police department might not be supportive of marijuana, and they might not run over there, and they might just take their sweet time getting to your facility because of their beliefs around marijuana. And there's still police officers who don't actually believe in this. And I get it because they've spent their whole career fighting drugs, and now all of a sudden, cannabis is legal in their state where they just spent the last 10 years locking people up for this. So of course they're going to still have a stigma around it. I think it's normal, but these things can happen. So vetting vendors, you want to make sure that you always go with 3 different vendors. So let's just say you're looking for a general contractor for your build out. Go to find 3. Look for 3 different general contractors, get 3 different bids. And then from that general contractor, you then want to get 3 references. No one checks references anymore. I checked them all the time when I was a manager. I got references for every person I interviewed, and I called them because it keeps you out of trouble. You can really, you can Google on the right ways to ask questions when you're hiring, but as much as would you hire them again, if they say no, I'm not going to hire that person. So even in my own business, I always vet vendors. Even just recently, I got some bids for social media. I asked for references. When I was hiring a business coach, I interviewed 4 different business coaches, and I asked them for references, and I called all their references. That's how important it is to me, because if this facility is your livelihood, my business is my livelihood. I want to make healthy choices, because I've seen people just make really bad choices. And I know there's people who just don't vet vendors. It's really wild, but and definitely vet consultants. I'm a consultant, but consultants have gotten really bad names, and I always tell people, no, vet me. I'll give you references, whatever you need, but make sure you vet consultants, because there's a lot of consultants out there that have taken advantage of people who don't know better, especially brand new people, never been in this industry, and they've got like the big wide eyes. They're so excited that they don't see the red flags. Those people I think are the weakest in this industry for being taken advantage of. So getting ready for inventory tracking. So if you aren't on a state mandated system, so if you're not required to be on a state mandated system, go out there and research good seed to sale tracking systems. A lot of them have I've seen some pretty amazing ones out there. They actually have an accounting side to them. Your employees can clock in. It tracks from seed to sale through every process, from harvesting all the way to the store to package and out the door. So if you have Metric in your state, you can go online to Metric and click on your state, and they will have information for you. You won't be able to get your Metric account up and running until you get accepted, your license gets accepted. You have to get a license before you can access Metric. But then one of the owners on the license has to go through training first before your Metric will be activated. So then Metric, you can actually sign up. I'm pretty sure they still do the 1-hour webinars that you can sign up for. I heard that they're pre-recorded now. Back in the old days when I was on Metric, they were not pre-recorded. They were actually a live webinar, but I think they got a little smarter and they pre-record them. So once you're on Metric and the owner's taking the training, I highly suggest you do their free Metric training every 3 months, because so much can change. So basically every quarter, so much can change in between every quarter on something that might change with Metric. There's also some really good Metric consultants out there who have come out of Colorado and have been on it since 2013, and they know it by the back of their hands. So you want to make sure that you hire somebody that has a Metric background. It might be a little more challenging in newer state, but you want to find someone who's really good with tech or computers, or they're really good at software. You don't want to pick someone who's going to get overwhelmed on software. There's also there's some really good examples seed to sale tracking systems out there. I know there's more than what I'm going to list, but there's Metric, BioTrack, Atlas, MJ Freeway. Um, and here's the thing, what I've learned about point of sale software, no one will ever be happy with any single one out there. Everyone I talk to, somebody complains about something about the software. Um, they complain about MJ Freeway, and then they might move to BioTrack, and then they complain about BioTrack, and then they get, on another one. And oh, it's like they could merge them all together and make the most amazing sale tracking, but they're just, none of them are going to be perfect. And you just have to remember that metric might get glitchy, your point of sale might get glitchy. It's just normal. It's just one of the things that I'm realizing just happens everywhere I go. It's not, people aren't always happy with their sale tracking. And I heard metric is just getting slower and slower because so many states are getting added. So marketing and branding your product. So this is something you could definitely be working on while you're in your licensing process. I always suggest if you're a grow, or if you're concentrates, edibles, or a dispensary, get your Facebook going, get your logo, get your brand. Website will be getting worked on and built, but you can start building a base on Facebook and Instagram. Like right now, I've gone to places where they had 5,000 followers on Instagram and they didn't even have their website up, but yet they already had a following, and people were like, where do I find this? Where do I find this? And they had all this mid facility that had these infused products. They just recently launched and maybe were out to market 3 weeks. They had a huge following on Instagram, and they were smart. They started, once they got their idea and their brand, they started putting it out there and they started building their base. Now all those people are going to start going to their website to find out what dispensaries their products are in. So you should be working on your branding and marketing and advertising. Well, advertising is tricky with marijuana, as we know, but you have to read your state rules on what the regs are around advertising. But you just want to, I would start working on that now, because then when you have your opening day, you can go out there to that base and say, come to our opening day. We have all these specials. Obviously, if you're a grow and a production facility, people aren't going to come to your facility, but you can say, hey, we're now on the shelves at these stores. Go find our product. So I think that's super smart thing to do, to be working on, and really easy to do. And for those of you owners who don't know how to run Facebook or social media, you can always see if your kids will help you out and just find a younger person, because they are very knowledgeable about social media. Okay, well, preparing for packaging and labeling. This is really important. Like I told you earlier, I knew someone who waited 2 weeks before they were going to open, and then they couldn't find the proper CR containers. If you're in a state where child resistant CR packaging is required in your rules and regulations, I highly recommend you get a certificate from that packaging company that proves that what you have is CR packaging. And in Colorado, we're actually required to have that on file as part of our record keeping, is a CR certificate saying that your packaging is child resistant. And here's why. Because if I come in as an auditor, even a state inspector or agent, and I'm looking at these pop tops and I'm like, this is child resistant, and I pop it open and I'm like, my 5-year-old could get this open, and then you don't have a certificate saying, well, no, here's a certificate from the manufacturing company. They went through all the proper FDA or federal regulatory child resistant packaging process. Here's the letter. So that's why it's important to have that certificate, that letter, that certification, because especially if you're in a new state and you have an investigator come in, they might question your pop tops, and I've had a lot of people question pop tops, and that's why I like having the certificate. So getting ready for the retail market. A couple things to think about. How does your packaging look? I know in Michigan, when the rules were emergency rules and dispensaries were beginning to transition over to some of the new rules, I saw some wild stuff. I mean, it reminded me of Colorado in 2009. It was wild. It was like Rice Krispie treats, cartoon characters, product in Ziploc baggies. It reminded me of the old days. And I was like, wow, those people are going to get in trouble. Like, that's not the right packaging. And I even saw one company, and I can't remember, but they basically were copying Hershey candy bars. They were literally, oh no, it was Cheetos. I'm sorry. So somebody had the Cheetos logo, no joke, and they took Cheetos and they infused the Cheetos, and then they took the Cheetos logo and put it on a sticker on their infused product. And I actually emailed the company out in Michigan, and I said, you should be careful because you might get a cease and desist letter from the company, and you could get in a lot of trouble from that. I only know that because it happened in Colorado. There was one company that was using like gas station candy and spraying it with an adulterant to make it like spraying THC on it instead of actually infusing it. And you can no longer do that in Colorado. You can't use manufactured product, already manufactured candy or products, even like coffee or anything, without the permission from the manufacturer. I have clients who make coffee. They actually have a letter from the manufacturer that they have permission to legally infuse that product. So that rule came into place because people were just spraying gummies and, and so you have to be careful when you're a brand new state. Yeah, getting a bag of Cheetos and spraying it with THC and using their logo might sound like a good idea in the beginning, but in a regulatory framework, it's not a good idea. It's a disaster for lawsuits. So you wanna make sure that if your packaging rules that are coming out, don't do the Ziploc baggies. It's just so like it's like street cannabis, That's what you get from your drug dealer. We're trying to get away from the drug dealer look. Get a nice packaging. If you guys can have glass, you do glass jars. If you don't have to do CR or opaque, we have to have our containers opaque and child resistant out here. Just, have professional labels, because as a person, especially as a woman who shops, I like branding. I like quality, but I like things to look good too. I don't want it in a Ziploc bag. That's why I go to dispensaries now. I don't buy from the black market anymore. It's very black market. And we all came from the black market. That's how this whole thing started. You have to leave the black market behind if you're getting licensed. You can't have that vibe anymore. So definitely really think about how you're going to look in the retail market. And also, it might be new in your state, but eventually you get 2 to 3 years in, and now all these producers are making edibles. Now you're competing for shelf space. And if your product looks crappy and the packaging is horrible and there's someone else doing it better than you, I'm going to put them on the shelf over you. So those are things to think about. Back in Colorado, I was desperate. I ordered everything I could because there weren't a lot of MIP companies out there producing edibles. And now it's like there's so many. I go in these dispensaries, I'm like, holy cow, there's so much product out there now. And people even hand out these pieces of paper saying, oh, we'll review your product. Like, there's no guarantee to get on the shelf anymore. It's just like a grocery store, Whole Foods, trying to get on shelf space there. And so your product has to be that good. So you need to think about how your products, sure, you might get on the shelf out the gate because everyone's getting licensed and there's a demand for them needing product. But when that demand gets met and now everyone's producing, you might get dropped by some dispensaries because there's better product out there. And that's what you have to be on the lookout for. So red flags. This is really important. I always say red flags don't turn green, and that's so true. You can't trust everyone. And I think this is in every industry, honestly. I know the cannabis sector gets kind of a bad name, and I think it's just because it's so new, and you got people coming in only saying they're an expert and they've been at it a year. or they're charging you triple of what other people are charging you, and they've only been doing it a year, 2 years. So you have to really, that goes back to what I said about vetting vendors. Here's the thing about my red flag goggles. I'm always like this, my red flag goggles. So when you're getting licensed, you're tired, you're working 60, 70 hours a week, you're trying to get everything done, you're in the middle of your build out, you're probably stressed out, but you're also excited because your dreams are coming true. I believe for some people this is a dream and they're out there working on their dreams, and you can get overwhelmed. And so imagine you have all this stuff going on, and it's so easy to not see red flags. So everyone should just slow down and really look for red flags. Hiring people in your family, that can be challenging. Some people are successful with operating with their family. A lot of times family will come in and they work for free. I get it. You're starting your business. But you just have to be careful because you can have red flags with your family too, with your friends, and other vendors and stuff like that. You have to do a gut check with yourself. Even if you like them and you connected well with them, don't just pass something over because it could catch up to you in a couple months and it could actually turn out to be a bad thing. There are people out there who are really good at faking that they're for you and on your team, and they're here to support you, but they actually have an agenda. And maybe that agenda doesn't get revealed till later on. So just please make sure you're looking for red flags. And like I said, they don't ever turn green. Another thing is money and cost. If it's too good to be true, yeah. Because cheaper is not always better. I know people who have gone the cheaper route and it has burned them in the end. So it's really important to invest in your business. You're getting licensed in the cannabis industry in a regulated environment. You just have to invest the money. Like, why are you here? I get it. People get in so they can flip and get out in 5 years and make $1 million and get out. But don't forget about the patients. Don't forget about the customers. This is medicine to people, and it's really not all about, oh, how much money I can make. Sure, the money's great. Don't forget about, at the end of the day, it's really about your customers and providing them with the best services possible. So you want to create a culture, you want to create a culture of compliance at every phase. I talk about this a lot, pretty much in all my trainings, all my videos. I am a big believer in the culture of compliance. Obviously, you have a work culture. Is the work culture healthy or unhealthy? Like if I'm going to refer an employee to a facility, if I know that work culture is unhealthy, there's no way I'm going to tell that employee to take that job. And if I know a good facility with a good culture, looking for a good manager or an employee, and I'm like, well, that employee is questionable, meaning if I know I wouldn't hire them, yeah, we're friends, or I think you're a good person, but if they're lacking the skill set, I might not refer them to a facility. It might not be a good match. So things that you have to think about is how can you create compliance culture? Well, pretty much all the things that I just talked about in this whole presentation inherently creates a compliance culture. All you have to do is be engaged in compliance and the structure and your operation and your operating procedures and the rules and regulations, and that creates a compliance culture. You just want your employees to be in an environment where they're like, oh, okay, compliance is normal. Being compliant and following the rules is normal. Not breaking the rules are normal. There are some facilities where they think breaking the rules and not following the rules it's normalized, and then that's how violations come up, or I have a lot of people say, oh, we got it. We don't need an outside auditor. Well, that's not true. Because when you're, and I know this because I was a manager and I missed a ton of stuff too, and I'm a compliance person, but because my plate was so full as a general manager or a manager or director of operations and all the positions I've had, that I was so caught up in my role and managing, employees, the facility, maybe the grow and the store. Plus the owner was always putting stuff on my plate. And then I had to go and read 900 pages of rules in Colorado. Are you kidding me? Of course I'm going to miss something. That's why outside eyes are so important. Because someone like me, the only thing on my plate is compliance now. I'm not an employee anymore. So I can come in and find things that you might not have known about, or you didn't catch a rule change, or you didn't have time to read all the new rules going into effect. I've been in facilities who didn't realize the SOP rules changed in January 1st, 2018, and now we're in 2019, and now there's new SOP changes. So having an outside person once a year is super important, because I'll catch things that you might not catch, and that's totally fine. It's a good buffer to have. So you just want to provide yourself and your staff with the best context possible for compliance. And some facilities can, afford a huge compliance team, like the Live Wells or the Native Roots. They have a huge staff of compliance people, and they have lawyers on staff. I get it. But there's the smaller organizations that maybe have 2 or 3 stores or less, or mom and pop shops. The manager does everything. That's just how it is. As a manager, I did everything. I never just said, oh, this is the one thing that you're going to do. I wore many, many different hats and never had a compliance team to help me at all. And that's a pretty normal position to be in this industry. So building relationships. You want to make sure that you build relationships when you're in the licensing process. You want to get to know if there's board members for the licensing authority, or your regulators like the health department, or like the marijuana enforcement division, or the fire department, your inspectors. You treat them with respect. I don't care how pissed off you get. I've been at meetings where people are screaming at each other. I've gone on videos where I watch people cursing out, the board that was doing all the processing for the licenses in Michigan. And I get it. People are passionate. This is medicine. This is affecting patients who are sick. Like, why are you taking so long for us to get our license, to get the medicine out there for people that they need to have safe access to cannabis? So I get where a lot of frustration or passion comes from. At the end of the day, you really should have a good relationship with regulators. I go to a lot of meetings, or especially around in Denver. I have good relationship with the health department. I just attended a food safety class yesterday for dispensaries and grows. They know me by my first name. They know I'm there because I'm trying to help my clients. I go to those events like PPE training for mask fitting for people who are spraying pesticides. Am I a big pesticide fan? No. Do I buy product that doesn't have pesticides on it? Yes. But at the end of the day, that's not my job. My job is to help everyone, whether they're using pesticides or not. So I need to educate myself, to educate my clients, to help them be the best they can be, no matter which side of the road that they're walking on. So I have to build relationships in my business so I can, create healthy relationships to support my clients. So you need to do the same thing. And you want to have good relationships with regulators, and screaming at them and writing nasty comments about them on the internet is not the way to do it. Because they will remember how they were treated. Oops, not used to doing it from the mouse. There we go. So one of the things that you could do is you want to get signed up on regulatory platforms in your state. We're so blessed in Colorado because we've been at this a while. Our medical marijuana passed with Amendment 20 in 2000, and we have A64 Amendment 64 that passed in 2012. So I think we've been regulating adult use since 2014 was when the first licenses came out. And I think medical, it was kind of regulated. I mean, I don't really consider it to be regulated when people were growing in their basement and they were coming into our dispensary and we were buying out of their duffel bag. That's not where we are now. So I think once the Marijuana Enforcement Division came out and there was actually a licensing process for us in the state, that's when I feel really became regulated. So, so things you want to sign up for is OSHA, national and state. I get emails all the time from OSHA in Colorado. They send me all kinds of events that they have going on that are free. I go and I attend them. I try to soak up as much OSHA knowledge as I can in Colorado. There's also, you can follow it nationally. The health department, I get all our health department bulletins. They regulate us in Denver County. And they come in and they inspect dispensaries and production facilities every 6 months in Denver. Grows, they do not go every 6 months. They only go to grows if the MED calls them or the fire department or the CDA's in there and they see a health code violation issue, or they get reported that somebody got sick from a product, and then they will come in that facility. Like if a fire department is in there doing an inspection and they see mold or spider mites all over your plants, they actually will call the health department on you. They're all the regulatory branches in Colorado, especially Denver, they're all working together now. So when they're out doing inspections, if they see something, they'll call the right regulatory department to come out and check on you. So there's nowhere to hide. You shouldn't be hiding, but there's nowhere to hide. So another bulletin is state bulletin. So I'm signed up with the Marijuana Enforcement Division. Like in Michigan, you can get signed up on LARA. They'll send you like a ton of bulletins. I get so many bulletins out of Michigan, it's insane. But I love that they're doing that for their state. For city, I know for Denver County, and even if you're in Colorado and you're not in Denver, I would go to the Denver website and get signed up for the bulletins anyways, because there's lots of good information. There might be a class. That's how I find out about all the classes that I can attend that Denver County puts on. Department of Agriculture for your state, the EPA. So those are all examples. Oh, and the fire department, the Denver Fire Department, you can sign up for bulletins. They have a good section on marijuana on their website. I think Colorado Springs has some good stuff too. Not every city outside of Colorado, outside of Denver, has those kind of resources. More like the bigger cities in our state. So just do the research, because what this allows is that now it gets all pushed into your email box, and you're not having to spend hours searching on the internet looking for this information. Now it gets flooded into your inbox, and it's right there for you to access and read. And I learned that early on as a manager. I mean, the old days, as a manager, we couldn't even get MED notifications. It only strictly went to the owners. Well, sometimes the owners never passed on a bulletin. So as a manager, you never even knew there was a bulletin or an emergency rule that came out. And finally, the MED allowed that everyone can sign up for MED bulletins now. But in the beginning, it was not that way. Only the owners got the bulletins. And that was pretty scary as a manager. I'm almost done for those of you. I don't have my little box closed, but oops. Let's keep going here. Oh, I see. I forgot. Start over. Sorry. I'm just down to my last 2 slides. I know we're just about at an hour. I'm a little over. Sorry. All right. So people, processes, and products. People, processes, and products. I got this from Marcus Lemonos. I don't know if that's right, but he's on The Profit on cable, and I love him because I think he's full of integrity, and that he's all about people, the employees, the processes, and the product. And those are the 3 things that I believe in too when operating a business. I think employees are everything. They are the gatekeepers of compliance. They are the grease to our gears in this industry. Without employees, we wouldn't have this industry. And so I'm an advocate for employees in this industry. That's no secret because I'm an ex-employee. So, um, so people are your employees. He always talks about making sure you're treating your employees right and giving them benefits and doing everything that you can for your employees, because at the end of the day, if your employees are happy, your customers will be happy because they'll be willing to do anything for you because they'll be invested in the business. Processes, make sure that you have your processes in place. And product, are you trying to launch with 50 items? That's ridiculous. Why not just launch with 2 or 3 items and really get your name and brand out there and focus on the one good thing and then start adding stuff in later? Or are you going to be a grow that, that all of a sudden you launch, you have 50 strains? How do you know all 50 strains are going to sell? That's why I always say start small with your product when you're launching. You can always build from there and get customer feedback. So it's always, it's always important to remember people, process, and product when you're doing your business. Like I said earlier, when you invest in compliance, you invest in your business, you invest in yourself as an owner, and you're investing in your employees. So it's really important to, and when you're building out, you're in the process of your application process, and maybe you're like, how much money should I put aside for marketing? How much should I put aside for getting the right employees? And how much should I spend on, advertising, or maybe on a job board? You should also be putting aside money for compliance, at least at a minimum $50,000 a year when you're first starting out. Cutting corners. So I talked a little bit about this earlier. There are people who don't want to spend the money, or they want to move through the process as fast as possible. A lot of people are like, I need to get from A to B to C as fast as I can. Well, you're actually missing out on the best part, which is the journey between A, B, and C. That's where all the good stuff is. It's not like hurry up and get me there. When you hurry up and get me there, you end up cutting corners and you miss out on really important things. And it's more about the reward and not the risk. So if you're not fully invested in your business and yourself, you're going to cut corners. And this is nothing new for anyone who's a dispensary manager out there. I'm sure you've all worked in places where they've cut corners. I've worked at some amazing places, where I'm still friends with the owners to this day. But I worked at other places where they wouldn't give me the resources to do what I needed to do for my employees. That's why I became such a resourceful manager, because I had to figure out how to do, on a nothing budget, how to do all I could for my employees. And that's just sometimes the situation that we're in as managers. So cutting corners will always bite you in the end. Trust me. I've even cut corners in my personal life, and I'm like, dang, I knew better. Why did I do that? And then you get that awesome reminder of, oh no, yeah, I made that mistake. And it's okay. Making mistakes is good. I'm not saying you should not reach for perfection, because I don't believe that there's perfect out there, especially when we're trying to learn. And if you do cut a corner, that's okay. Just learn from it, or you'll just keep getting bit and bit and bit. And a lot of times people cut corners too because the harder way is too hard, and people just want to go the easy way. Trust me, the harder way, the benefit is so much better. You'll get paid back triple when you choose the harder way. Hard work always surpasses easy work. Of course, people want easy work, but I'm telling you, working hard always pays off. You just want to make sure too, when you're getting to this space, what's the risk? You want to have a risk management and mitigate what's the risk of me opening this cultivation facility? What could I lose? How could I affect my employees? What will I, if I'm not in compliance as an owner, what risk am I putting my employees at too? And as an employee, you have to mitigate the risk for yourself and your badge, if you're badged in your state. I can't tell you how many places I left because there was a risk when it came to compliance. And I was the compliance person, and the owner was like, I don't want to spend the money to come into compliance. And I'm like, well, I'm going to leave and go work for someone who does want to be in compliance. So there's risk for owners and there's risk for employees. So each person, you really need to assess the risk and what you're stepping into. And so one of the things when you don't take, I guess one of the things that happens when I was talking about cutting corners earlier is that one, you put your business at risk. Two, your patients suffer, believe it or not, your customers and patients suffer. If you're cutting corners, it's actually going to, believe it or not, it's going to show up in your employees. They're just not going to care. I can walk into a dispensary in 10 minutes and know if the employees care. It doesn't take me that long. I've got 6 years under my belt as a dispensary manager, and I was in the restaurant industry for 23 years. I've been an employee my whole life. It's really easy to know if employees are happy or not. Your employees are at risk. It will always come back to get you, and it will make your life harder. So these are things to think about. Are you taking a healthy risk, or are you actually taking a pretty shady risk that's going to put your patients and your employees and your livelihood and your business at risk? Oops, I'm just trying to, okay, there we go. So in 2017, this awesome manual came out. I love this manual, and even though it's a couple years old now, it has so much valuable information for grows, production facilities, and dispensaries. This is really OSHA based. A couple consultants and a couple state regulatory branches actually put this together in Colorado in 2017. They still actually have a worker safety and health course online. I just posted about it in my last newsletter for March. I put the link in my newsletter where you can go take the course. I thought it was maybe $49 for and you have access to it for 6 months. I attended that course, and it was amazing. And they handed out this free PDF. And so I'll share the link with you guys. I would download this, and it's still available. And I would download this and print it and put it in a binder in your facility. There's all kinds of good compliance and OSHA tips in here for cannabis facilities. So you want to visit the Colorado Department of Health and Environment website, and it's a free 78-page PDF guide for worker safety in cannabis. And we'll have question and answers in a second. And I just want to say thank you. Oops, holy moly, went too crazy fast. Okay, so here's my information. Take a screenshot. You can email me at jenny@icsconsultingservice.com, or you can go to my website, icsconsultingservice.com. I'm on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Business Personal. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me, even if you're watching the recorded version of this video. You can still email me and reach out to me, and I really appreciate everyone for joining me today. I'm going to take questions in a second. If there's anyone, let me just stop my recording. So once again, thanks again for joining me today.